like
bringing some Timothy Chalamet
who
in
could
there.
I was gonna say like Timothy Chalamet as Valar.
Get that sweet jawline in for the Targaryens.
Right.
I don't know.
Musical guest Timothy Chalamet. Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Pot of the Seven Kingdoms, where you can join us on a journey through a reread or a reading of the Dunk and Egg novellas. I'm Phil.
And I'm Caroline, also known as Belock on the internet, and I have my competing Targaryen flag today.
We now have the Civil War representation of Blackfyre v. Targaryen.
Yes, please ignore the Game of Thrones bit. We don't talk about the bad show, but this is my Targaryen flag. So
exactly.
I figured this was easier than actually painting this wall behind me. So there you go. That's what we got.
Well, I do like that our like little set design will become more relevant as this book series wears on, as we make our way through this podcast. But I did want to say to everyone joining us, thank you for doing so. And if you're joining us for the first time, the first 4 episodes are all available on YouTube, in which we read up to page 40. And so this section today is going to be from 40 to 50. We'll be covering this section today. It is a close reading, so we'll dive into what actually happened, the analysis, some themes, and then what we want to see in the show. But Caroline, I mean, in starting out this this section, this was Dunk actually trying to get into the tournament, like officially now.
Yeah, this is him applying for the job and waiting for the response, and then saying no, and him saying no, but wait, no, but wait, I need you to rethink that because I already bought the armor. So the beginning of this section is actually Dunk returning after having purchased his armor back to camp to find Egg, and sort of showing off his armor to Egg, and we get a really adorable little interaction with them. Egg had, as according to Doug, Egg had worked manfully at the campsite.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but he worked manfully at the campsite. And Egg is like, hey, you sold your horse. And Dunk's like, oh, how did you know? And Egg's like, because you left with a horse and you've come back without a horse. So...
You walked back into camp, and I'm pretty sure if someone stole your horse, you'd be pretty mad. So basically it's not rocket science.
Right. And Dunk's like, whoa, this kid notices a lot of things. So unlike our protagonist, Egg is very noticing.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it was here, but there's a moment where Dunk Dunk even says to himself, like, my squire is smarter than me.
Yeah, he does. At least he can recognize that. There's some reflection there. That's good.
And I think we'll get to this sort of in these parts, but just the realizing, having any sort of like self awareness is rare in this society, especially among the nobility that Dunk is like rubbing elbows with.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Dunk is not the most noticing sort, as we'll learn in this section.
No, definitely not.
But he shows his new armor to Egg, and Egg has a lot of opinions about it. And Dunk's like trying to teach him about armor, and Egg's like, there's no visor, there's no crest. And Dunk's like, shut the fuck up. Like, this is fine.
Yeah.
This is perfect armor for me. I'm so good. It's so great. Like, calm down. I don't need any of those things.
It's a little bit of Dunk coming back with like he just bought a new car. It's like a Honda Accord. It's like super sensible.
It's like a Honda Civic. It's like
Honda Civic. It's on the cheaper end, entry level, but it's like extremely reliable. Exactly what he needs. He doesn't. And Egg is essentially like, why is this not a Porsche?
Yeah.
And he's like, because I'm poor. I don't have money. But it does suggest that like Egg is used to fancier suits of armor where visors are. I mean, Dunk even says visors aren't very practical, especially for tourneys. And then the crest, he's like, why would I have a crest? Like,
but the visor bit is interesting too, because I think what it's implying is that having a visor makes the helmet more expensive because it's a separate piece that moves.
Sure.
Right? It has like function.
Yeah.
And as opposed to having to take the whole helmet off to like do anything or see anything.
Right.
And there's no way Dunk was going to get that, right? But he's like, no, we don't need a visor. It's very dangerous. People get shot through the eye all the time. I don't know, like you don't want a visor.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's here where Dunk says the boy's too bold for his own good. I ought to beat that out of him. He knew he would not, though. He liked the boldness. He needed to be bolder himself. My squire is braver than I am and more clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love this little section because it leans into what we've talked about previously of Dunk's like impulse is mentorship of like he brings back a suit of armor and is like, let me teach you about armor and like, do you know how to scour mail and all this sort of stuff, like where it's very much he goes into this like teaching mode sort of automatically. And then his realization too that like this kid does know. Oh, and that he has this like sort of he always says that he's gonna beat him, right?
Yeah, but he's like never going to actually do that.
He's like, I'm not going to. And like, and actually it's not a good idea because he needs to be bold and all that sort of. So I thought that was very interesting as well. Just his like we see that pop up again that like, oh, I should beat him, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah. Well, Dunk is really good at teaching someone how to be a squire because he's also a squire. So
right.
He's like, I got this. I got the squire stuff down.
Yeah.
But this is also the first place we see Egg be like, because Dunk's like, I'm going to take you into the festival tomorrow. And Egg's like, we don't have to go in the castle, right?
Yeah.
And it's the first time we get an inclination that like Egg does not want to go into the actual castle. And Dunk is like, kind of like curious about that, and he reasons it out in his little brainsies, and he says, he's afraid, like perhaps he fears to enter a lord's hall. He'll grow out of it in time. Basically thinking, Egg is lowborn, he's afraid, he's like a kid, he's a lowborn kid, he's like bald and weird looking, whatever, he's like afraid to go into a lord's hall, just projecting his own life onto Egg. And completely missing everything else happening around.
And then we pick up where we left off in that Dunk in the last episode needed to find Lord Dondarrion to vouch for him because the steward was like, absolutely not. We can't tell that you're a knight, but if
Stewart said we have to check your references,
exactly. But if Dondarrion says so, then you're good. And so Dunk seeks him out, and it proceeds to be the worst interaction like I've read in a long time. This one will tug at the heartstrings in a very negative way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of this section is chock full of themes. Oh my god, I love it. But before we jump to that, I just want to say that they mentioned the Vulture King. There are so many Vulture Kings in the history of Westeros. There's, I think, 2 under Jaehaerys. Oh my goodness, I'd have to go back. Go listen to my podcast, House of Fire and Blood. I do with my friend Gretchen. We've talked about multiple Vulture Kings reading through Fire and Blood, and Fire and Blood does not include this section of the history. So how many men have claimed to be the Vulture King?
He's like, I'm the new Vulture King.
He's like cosplaying. He's got like fucking feathers and shit. He's like, I'm the Vulture King.
Yeah. It's the Dread Pirate Roberts of Dorne of like, it's just a bunch of people passing down the title of Vulture King like randomly.
Exactly. So like, so Dunk goes and speaks with Sir Manfred to try to be like, I totally scarred for Sir Arlen, and Sir Arlen fought for your Lord Father and fighting the Vulture King in the Red Mountains. Yep. And Sir Manfred basically says like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Yeah. He's like, I don't remember you. I don't remember your alleged master. Which Dunk Dunk was struck speechless for an instant. The old man took a wound in your father's service. How could you have forgotten him?
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, Dunk is like, Sir Arlen got injured fighting for you.
Right.
And you're like, I have no memory of you.
Yeah.
You are nothing to me.
Yeah. It's the elevator scene from Mad Men or whatever of the you're a horrible person, and Don Draper being like, I don't think about you at all.
Yeah. Yikes. Really, I mean, and it's you know, it's very like the Game of Thrones, right? Not the bad show, like the phrase in the books, like that the lords play their Game of Thrones and the small folk suffer, right? And like we're finally seeing that from a small folk point of view. So we'll definitely come back to that in terms of classes, and that's like a very rich section.
Yep.
But basically, Sir Manfred says, "Nah, I'm not vouching for you. I don't know who you are."
Yeah. And it gets worse because Dunk has an idea.
Okay, listen. If this was a D&D campaign, he has an idea, but when he does his charisma check, he rolls a natural 1.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what happened. He's like, I'm going to move this man emotionally by telling him the story of how House Dondarrion got its sigil. And like the fact that I know that will prove that I squired for someone who was in service to his house.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells it like in very dramatic, like it's this huge section. It's like half a page of him telling the story. And Manfred's like, fucking everyone knows that.
Yeah. Which, like, if I'm being... So this was the worst part for me because I'm like, to me, right, if someone goes out of this way, and we'll talk more about this sort of in the coming section, but essentially, like, what actually is he worried about? Like at no point is he saying like, I can't really risk it because if I vouch for you, I don't know you, like, and if I vouch for you and you turn out to be some robber knight or something like that, then like then it'll be a stain on my house, and I can't really afford that. I'm not like big enough, you know, to like throw my weight around here and whatever. That would have been one thing. But at no point does he express any concern about anything. He just says like, I've already he even says like, I've given you enough of my time, and that was before Dunk tells the story of how they got this. So like he is just like over it. And but I thought this was crazy because if someone went out of their way to tell this story, for him to just be like, everybody knows that, it's like, okay, that isn't that some indication that this random dude knows your house, like your house's story? Like, isn't that some indication?
And like you're saying, it's like, why is it difficult for you to just be like, yeah, this kid's cool, like,
right?
It's not going to hurt you in any way.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
if he performs badly, it's not going to reflect on your house. He's not part of your house. He's just like some hedge knight. And
you can just as easily dismiss after the fact, right? By them saying like, oh my God, like this guy, you vouch for this guy. You'd be like, he squired for a guy that fought for my father. Like that's the strength of our connection. Like, and no one would think twice about it. Like no one would ever think about it again.
And if he does well, then you could be like, that's that guy that I vouched for. Like you're absolutely right. Like it doesn't make logical sense, except that Manfred's classist and he's like gross, a poor person. And it's like, I can't speak to you any further. I'm busy. I have a very busy schedule. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, exactly. But Dunk does have a bit of good luck. So after this very, very poor interaction with Manfred Dondarrion, he has a bit of luck because he basically is like, I have to go back to the steward, but I don't really know what I'm going to tell him. And I just know that he's going to be at the Great Hall. So he goes to the Great Hall.
And he just whoopsie-doodles himself right into a really important conversation. He trips and stumbles and goes, whoa, not the main plot. Oh, no. And then all of a sudden, he's in a room with a bunch of Targaryen princes.
Yeah.
Isn't
I do love this idea of like a character, like a side character from a different book stumbling into the main plot of some other book, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's like, wait, is this the events of the main series? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's like, hold on, this seems like Lordly House events. I have a natural pavilion in the woods, so
Right.
I don't know if I belong in this scene.
I have a lot more like low stakes adventures.
Yeah.
I'm deciding like what to spend my coin on. Like,
I'm gonna go flirt with this puppet girl in a minute. Like,
yeah, like that's
yeah,
kind of that's like the height of my drama.
yeah,
Can I buy the suit of armor? Not
yeah,
like there are lords talking
yeah,
about secret
yeah.
things.
Like gossiping about how their sons are into like having whores a lot, apparently.
Yeah.
So he stumbles into the Great Hall, and there's a bunch of dudes there talking, and it is a little confusing to follow. I think it's like supposed to be,
Yeah.
but they're talking about. So the people they're talking about are Prince Daron,
Mhm.
who is, oh my goodness, which one's son is that?
Maekar. So yeah,
Okay.
Maekar's sons are the two that are missing.
So
But
okay,
yeah, so it's like it's Maekar's sons
so
that
we're
they're
under
like,
because right now we're family tree time.
Yep.
This is really important.
Yes.
So we're under King Daron II.
Yes.
His heir is Baelor,
Yep.
who has his own sons.
Yes. Valar and Mataris, I think, are the
Yeah. Then the second of King Daeron's sons is Maekar, right?
he's the fourth.
He's the fourth.
He's
Okay,
the
so
youngest.
it's Balon.
Oh wait, did I mess that up?
No, I might have the order wrong. There's too many fucking Targaryens. They have the same goddamn name. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it is yeah. No, we had it right because he is the youngest of Daeron's sons. Maekar is.
Maekar. Okay, so then it's King Daeron. His sons are Baelor, Aerys, Rhaegal, and Maekar. Maekar's has 4 sons.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is the family tree. Daeron Targaryen, king.
Yep.
Has sons Baelor, Aerys, Rhaegal, and Maekar.
Okay, so you were right the first time.
Yeah, and then so Baelor has Valar.
Yep.
And then Maekar has Daeron, Aerion, Aemon.
Amen.
And then Daella, Rey, and Aegon the Fifth.
Right.
Or Aegon.
Yeah.
So he's got like a whole crap ton of kids. I forgot how many daughters he had too.
Yeah.
No girls allowed in this story though. We don't have.
Yeah.
This is for the boys. This is.
It's all jousting.
This is jousting time.
It's sports.
Girls don't go to sports. Yeah, they don't go to their brother's baseball game.
Exactly.
So, oh no, now I have an ad over my family tree. Okay, so Dunk walks in. There's some Targaryens in the room, but he does not necessarily make that connection right away.
No, definitely not. He notices how like the physical size of everybody first. Of like, he notices the one guy is like thickly built and powerful. And then says the prince, he was surely a prince. So he like starts to put 2 and 2 together with Maekar.
Yeah.
And then, but he's still not putting together, like he notices the one prince and he's like still not putting together like who is everybody else in the room. And he quickly realizes like, I should not be here.
Yeah, he's like, I have in fact stumbled into the plot of the main series and I don't belong in this series. I'm in the silly side series. Wait a minute. But they notice him before he can leave. And they call him over.
And it is the seated figure who like notices him.
So he tells him to come close, and he says, "Come closer, sir." So he calls him sir as a knight. And Dunk's like, "Okay, we're on. We got it. We're sir. Got it. Okay." And he goes in front of them, and he doesn't know what to do. And he says immediately his whole plot. He says, "I asked Sir Manfred Dondarrion to vouch for me, so I might enter the list, but he refuses. He says he doesn't know me. Sir Arlen served him, though. I swear it. I have his sword and shield. And then they start yelling at him. They're like, a sword and shield doesn't make a knight, whatever. And the men around, so like Sir Asher or whatever, start being like you're not a knight, like you don't have a sword and shield. And the seated man who had called him over interrupts and says that he remembers Sir Arlen of Pennytree.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he starts to describe different things about Arlen's life. Dunk is corroborating them as well. Like, oh yeah, the old man told me those things too. And then Dunk passes test number 1, which is remembering a name.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets quizzed on, because he this seated figure like talks about Atlantisport, Sir Arlen unhorsed the Gray Lion himself. And Dunk is like, yep, I know that story. And then he's like, well, then you would know the Gray Lion's actual name then. And
this sounds like when you have like a nerd argument at like a convention, when you're like, well, this series was better than the other. Like, okay, well, do you know who wrote that episode or who was starring in that episode? Yeah. Did you read the manga?
So you know the Gray Lion. Name 10 Lannisters.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. But he does. He passes a test. And I thought this was an interesting name for a number of reasons. But Daemon, so he names Daemon Lannister, who we find out is the current Lord of Casterly Rock, whose nickname is the Gray Lion. Daemon spelled without an E, so Daemon it's not normally. It is a an Andal name and not like a Targaryen name, I guess.
I wonder what the backstory is there.
Just struck me as a little bit, but yeah, so this guy who's seated is being extremely like magnanimous with Dunk, which gets Dunk comfortable to an almost too comfortable. Where he ends up kind of stepping in it.
Yeah, so this guy in the chair is like talking to Dunk, and everyone around him like, why do you remember this shit? Like, this is stupid. Like these are like poor people. Why would you remember anything about the poors?
And we're like 2 seconds removed from Lord Ashford being like, you probably stole the sword and the shield.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this and he's like, what? Like, and so the man in the seat says, I make it a practice to learn all I can about my foes. And so then he says, it was 9 years past he had jousted Sir Arlen. And he said, we broke 4 lances before I finally unhorsed him. And Dunk, not thinking too hard, says 7. He corrects him.
Yeah.
And goes, 7. And it was against the Prince of Dragonstone. That joust happened. Not you. It was against the Prince of Dragonstone. And then it says, no sooner were the words out than he wanted them back. Dunk the lunk thick as a castle wall.
Dunk the lunk thick as a castle wall. And the first time we hear it in that way, and it will not be the last.
And he realizes, oh, wait a minute. This must be the Prince of Dragonstone.
Yeah, if the guy telling the story says he's the one that unhorsed Arlen, and Arlen told me over and over again how it was the Prince of Dragonstone, then maybe this guy is him.
It's like that meme of the lady with the math over her face, like
yeah, exactly.
That's Dunk.
He's doing the calculations of like, wait, but if he knows that.
What's that called? The transitive property? It's like, wait a minute, this connects to this, connects to this. Wait a second. So this is Baylor Breakspear. He's very important.
Yeah. And Dunk comes to the realization, too late. But then he starts the whole stumbling over his courtesies of he's saying my lord, but then has to correct himself with your grace. And he's trying to say I didn't mean to argue with you. Arlen always said I was an idiot. And
so sweet.
But Baelor, we get sort of the first picture of Baelor's obviously Baelor is being accepting of Dunk and like remembering a Hedge Knight who he jousted once 9 years ago, right? Like, so he's like, we're already seeing like a picture of this guy, but we've seen so many people like at the slightest misstep from Dunk are like either dismissive or like they will jump all over him, whatever. And Baylor just says like, no harm done, like rise or whatever. Like doesn't sharpshoot him on the like, oh, you called me my lord or whatever. Like,
or you corrected me about the number of lances. Because basically what Baylor says is like, all right, it was 4, but like I get it, stories get out of hand as time passes on. Like 7,
and
whatever.
like
but it was 4, but it's cool.
And like it's fine if Arlen told the story that way, like who cares?
Yeah.
But he just says like, and then and then I just love that it was, you know, Dunk has like the full realization of like, I am speaking with Baelor Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, Hand of the King, and heir apparent to the Iron Throne of Aegon the Conqueror. Where he's just like him saying that whole thing in his head was, you know, it is just this like realization of he's now punching like well above his weight. But he recalls too, like the kindness of Baelor because he didn't take Arlen's horse or armor.
Yeah.
And like didn't ransom them. And then he like further talks about the well, he steps in it again slightly. I'm saying like
he's trying to give a compliment and be like, so Arlen always told me you were the soul of chivalry, which is great, like very important for a knight. And then he says, and that the 7 kingdoms would be safe in your hands. And Baelor's like, hopefully not for a long time. Because it's like his dad is still alive. And Dunk's like, oh no, I didn't mean that.
I didn't mean like the king should die. So then he also like realizes he is able to then like put 2 and 2 together. Like once he realizes it's Baelor, then he realizes, oh, this must be Maekar. And so he like starts to assemble the picture a little bit. And then we get like the final sort of real just like cool guy move from Baelor, which any of the lords could have done up until this point, which is I don't see any reason why you shouldn't joust.
Yeah.
And that's that. Like it's over.
Go for it.
Right? Like I don't see any reason to keep you from jousting.
But
and he's
the decal on your shield needs to be changed though.
Yeah, you can't. There's like contractual stuff. You can't like wear an old sponsor or whatever.
Mercedes wants you to take that off. You got to get it. You're doing Red Bull now. You got to switch that.
So he's he realizes he's got to get a new sigil because he wasn't a trueborn son of Arlen.
Yeah. I do want to point out here though that Baelor is the only one who successfully did like tease out the fact that Dunk is telling the truth about Sir Arlen.
Right.
Because of Dunk's like reaction to knowing these things.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that like the fact that Dunk corrected him and was like, no, it was 7 and it was against the Prince of Dragonstone. Those are like the fact that Dunk didn't realize he was talking to the Prince of Dragonstone, but he was able to say that himself is proof that he was in fact Sir Arlen's squire.
Yes.
So like Baelor did successfully like figure it out.
Right.
But like Baelor probably would have been like, go ahead and joust anyway. I don't give a shit. You know, like have fun. Go ahead.
He just needed Dunk just needed someone who actually did notice stuff. And I think it's meant to feel in this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the themes, but I just feel like it's meant to feel very exceptional. That a guy like Baelor, obviously him being the crown prince and everything like that, it's extremely weird that he notices anybody, right? Like let alone a Hedge Knight that he jousted once. So because all of these other lords are going about their business like not noticing anyone around them, right?
Absolutely.
So he is meant to feel differentiated, I guess, like in that way.
And then the last little section we have in this section is Dunk going and partying it up in the little village in the little festival, and he sees some hot ladies, and he's like, "Oh, I could buy a hot lady, but I'm scared of ladies," so he does not buy a hot lady.
He also, I love how part of his dilemma is like, I could die tomorrow.
Yeah.
So like, should I? Because like, if I die tomorrow, I'll like feel like I should have.
Yeah.
But if she robs me, then like, then that won't be good. And
yeah,
maybe I won't die. Like maybe I won't die, right? So he does ultimately end up on the right side of like the cost benefit analysis here.
Yeah.
I did find this one interesting too, though, because like, how carelessly have we seen characters in this like world utilize prostitute, like, you know, or you know, frequent brothels, like whatever.
Yeah.
Without a second thought. Like there's not even 1 ounce of like, oh, is she gonna rob me, is she gonna whatever, because their gold is, you know, hoarded like somewhere, and all of their belongings are not going with them to the brothel.
And
where
that's
it's
also
like, where it's like, if he brings her back to camp, like that's everything he owns. Like he just like, and whether she could be completely pleasant or whatever, but he just doesn't know. It's a complete roll of the dice, and it's like, can I risk all of my shit
and
for this?
It's a classism thing too, because like we see in the main series, a lot of our main characters who are lords don't see sex workers as people,
right?
So they're like, I hired her to do this thing, like Tyrion hiring what's her face, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name, not Tysha,
Shay. Yeah.
Like Tyrion explicitly hires Shay for the girlfriend experience. He's like, I'm hiring you to pretend to love me. And she's like, got it. And then he's like, how could she have done this? It's like, but buddy.
Right.
And so Dunk here is like recognizing that like this woman is like a stranger and could be threatening to him. Like the classism clouds that a lot for our Lord characters. Like they can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
You know, being the situation. There's actually examples of that also in Fire and Blood. There's a few times where like a random prostitute or sex worker will like kill somebody important, and it's always magic. Everyone's like, it must have been witchcraft, and I'm like, no, it was just a lady who used a knife. Like ladies too can use knives. It happens.
Yep.
So Dunk is, you know, wise to the world and doing his best, but then he goes to the puppet show.
Yeah, he sees the story of it's Florian and Jonquil, and I really love that we get the line, sweet lady, said Florian, all men are fools and all men are knights where women are concerned. And I thought that is just like, man, that's like through the whole series, like you could absolutely, like you could, outside of the main series, like through every single book that George has written, like you could put that on different people. And yeah, so thematically I thought that was great. But
George R. R. Martin said, would you like some themes? Here's a puppet show.
Yeah.
Have you considered you are no knight, she was saying? Have you considered that as a theme?
Yep.
So yeah, Ed was watching the puppet show, and Dunk goes and gets him, and then Dunk is feeling all kinds of brave, and he actually talks to a girl.
He does.
He talks to her, and she's like, yeah, I paint the figurines. And he's like, oh, you paint? He's like, can you repaint my shield for me?
Yeah.
And she's like, of course. What do you want painted?
He's
like, I hadn't gotten that far.
Like, shit, I didn't think you were going to say yes.
Yeah. Can it be different than this? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and Egg, it's like him and Egg sort of come up. He wants the sunset colors. Egg has the idea for an elm tree.
And then the shooting star.
Yep.
My sweet boy. My sweet boy.
Dunk adds his lucky shooting star to the design.
Yeah.
Oh, we also got some light puppet work critique from Egg.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, that was good. I like how you make them move, Jonquil and the Dragon and all. I saw a puppet show last year, but they moved all jerky. Yours are more smooth. It's
A
like
the puppet critic.
that is such 8-year-old feedback for like a cartoon or whatever. Like there's just where they're like, I
Yeah.
like that one. The other
Yeah.
one I saw was bad. I liked yours. Like
He's gonna be posted on Tumblr in a few years with his opinions.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that he's seen another puppet show and
Mm-hmm.
Dunk just clues and clues and clues just flying over his head.
Yep.
And we find out that the girl's name is Tansel, and
Mm-hmm.
she says, I was called Tansel Too Tall. The boys used to call me because she's very tall, but she's not as tall as Dunk.
Yep.
And Dunk says, "You're not too tall. You're just right for." And then he stopped and blushes, and she's like, "For?" And he's like, "Puppets."
It's so good.
I want it line for line on screen. If it's not line for line on screen, I'm rioting.
If it's not line for line, I send it back.
So that's the section we read.
Yes, that brings us to the end of the section. So the in terms of analyzing this section, I mean, there's obviously we've picked out some of the things already, but the constant Dunk's like assumptions based on what he believes Egg to be.
Yeah.
He thinks Egg is an orphan from Flea Bottom like him.
Mm-hmm.
So
who may have had lice and had to shave his head. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he's constantly thinking of reasons why Egg does what he does or knows what he knows from his own lens as a former orphan from Flea Bottom. And he is almost like trying to make connection, like trying to draw a connection between them that he doesn't know isn't real. Like he thinks he thinks he's like building a bridge. And when in reality, like there's a very different dynamic going on.
Yeah, but he's just not aware of. I mean, what's interesting about it is that there is a parallel between them, but it's not the one he's thinking about. So the one he's thinking about is I'm a former orphan from King's Landing. He's a former orphan from King's Landing. We have a shared history. That's not the situation. But what is the parallel is Dunk was taken in as a squire when no one else would take him. And Egg has been now taken in as a squire when no one else would take him.
Yeah.
So kind of unwittingly, Dunk is creating a parallel experience in their lives, even though they have different histories that he's not aware of.
Right.
So it's not that there aren't parallels. It's just that Dunk is not aware of the correct parallels. Dunk didn't take a literary class on this book, so he doesn't know.
Right. Well, and I think there is something there too, and maybe it's a class thing, and as far as the themes go, but there is a bit of like we talked about Dunk's comfort around Egg because he makes these assumptions, right? Where he makes himself more comfortable because he is like, this is just an orphan kid who's my squire now. The reality is that like they do get along. They are like, there are these connections, and it is simply the structures and artificial social things that we build around like our societies that actually separate them.
It's almost as if class is fake.
Yeah.
Have you considered this theme?
Huh.
George said, I have a theme. Would you like to take it?
Yeah. And we see it across like how people, like you put in the notes with how different people treat Dunk. I mean, we've seen it through basically each section. There's like how Dunk interacts with people, how people interact with Dunk. It's all like through the lens of this class structure. And like the worst example we see of it is Manfred Dondarrion.
Yeah.
Where he gets to dismiss this person because he's a lord and this guy's not. Right? Like
when this guy, when Dunk is related to a man who served in his army and was injured.
Right.
Like, that is craziness.
Right.
That the Lord would be. I mean, I get it. Like, there's he lists how many people. Like, he hired like 800 knights or something. Like, he couldn't necessarily know every single one. Though I would say probably the Lord of Winterfell probably does. Like, the Starks probably are a family that know intimately their families and their knights. So it's I'm not saying it's impossible, because it's not. Just try harder. But even if Manfred was thinking that, to say that out loud,
right,
and to be I don't know who that was.
Yeah.
You're being told that this person served your family. What if what if he had died in his service?
Right.
What if Dunk turned around and was like, how do you not remember him? He died in your service protecting your father. What if it was something like that? It's the wealth and the classism for Lord Manfred protect him so much from any kind of consequences, right? That he can just be like, I've talked to you too long.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with this. I'm not inconveniencing myself at all.
Yeah.
For your benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes the Baelor thing so that's such a contrast.
Right. And that's what, for them to happen back to back, I think it's very intentional, obviously, in that it's you get this just horrendous example of somebody abusing their position for no reason, just to dismiss this person who's asking for his help. And then for Baelor, it's this guy stumbles into the hall. He happens to remember the guy that jousted for him, but there was never a moment where Baelor was like, who the fuck is that guy? Get him out of here. Right.
I kind of wonder, from Baelor's point of view, if he was like, that boy is so big. Who the fuck is that? I wonder if he was like, what would be really funny if this guy jousted.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that joust. He's huge.
It's really hard to knock him off the horse, but once he gets knocked, he's gonna fall real hard.
Yeah, I wonder if Baelor was just I gotta see this.
Yeah. That's funny.
Sounds good. Sounds great to me. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Baelor notices him come in when no one else did.
Doesn't make a big deal out of it.
Doesn't make a big deal about it. Calls him over. Calls him sir. It seems kind of like he was also they had mentioned that they were waiting for him to come around at some point. So, because it says,
oh yeah, there's this is, I think the steward maybe mentioned that I'm waiting for this knight or whatever, and they're like, oh, this is the knight that the steward.
And Baelor is the one that says he is the knight that our good steward was expecting. The seated man said. So, imagine that conversation beforehand.
Right.
The steward's like, hey, at some point, I have this giant kid who's definitely not a fucking knight.
Yeah.
Says he was a squire or whatever. He's gonna come around. I don't think he's gonna be able to prove it, but he probably was talking shit about
Yeah.
And I could totally see Baelor being like, fuck this guy.
Right.
He calls him right away, this is the knight that we were waiting for. No questions.
Yeah.
Good sir, come over here.
Yep.
I could totally see that power dynamic happening.
Yeah.
As if the steward's going to determine who participates in the joust over the prince.
Right.
Yeah.
There was also from Baelor the a line, because Maekar gets kind of worked up at one point of okay, we've spent enough time on this, we've got more important shit going on. And Baelor says to him we're the intruders. We're in their hall. This is not which is such a crazy contrast, because when have you ever known a king to go, when they go on these progresses or whatever, they expect every, the castle is theirs, right? When they're there,
it's part of their kingdom. So why is it they're allowed to be there? Why not?
When I'm there, I outrank you, right? And so I get to be wherever I want and whatever. So for him to say we're the intruders, the princes are the ones who are intruding on the business of this tournament and normal sort of the normal course of business, I guess you would say. I think that's a level 2 of self-awareness that is extremely rare. And so Baelor has a lot of trappings of what you would want from I would say a modern version of leadership, where it is very much like it's not self-centered. It's not like, it's not focused on title and all of that stuff. It's like very much like, hey, I want to make sure that people are taken care of, and like I'm not going to abuse my position to do it and all that sort of stuff. So I think like, you get this sort of he almost feels like out of time. Like,
yeah. And I wonder, I mean, we could theorize about this as we progress through the book, to the extent that we get any information, but we know his mother is Dornish, which is something that we'll talk about more probably in the next episode. But there's a very different culture in Dorne than in the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. So that's certainly something that we can consider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did want to, before we move to the last part, except we probably can wrap this up into a conversation about, good old Targaryen blood purity. But but I did want to give you a chance, because I think we actually skipped over it in the family tree confusion. The name Rhaegal. Yes. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that.
Thank you. So this is a theory that I've been developing with my friend Gretchen, who I do my podcast with, House of Fire and Blood, if anybody wants to listen to it, where we're doing a very close reading of the Fire and Blood book. And what we've been tracking is names, because George R. R. Martin has patterns of names. And you and I actually talked about the importance of names as well. And that comes up in the story in a variety of ways. But if you look at the Targaryen family tree, all of the Targaryens whose names start with an R-H-A-E, Ray, overwhelmingly female. Overwhelmingly females that are in some way disempowered.
Sure.
Rhaenys is our first one. We have Rhaena, then Rhaenys again, the queen who never was, Rhaenyra, Rhaella, like there's a bunch throughout the family tree that are all in some way disempowered women. A lot of them are women who like had a colorable claim to some kind of throne and were passed over in some fashion for a younger brother. That's like very common. The only two Targaryens males with the RHAE prefix is Rhaegal, who we see here briefly, and Rhaegar. And Rhaegal is like sickly, and I believe does not have any children and does not ever come into any kind of power. And Rhaegar is obviously the prince that is killed, ending the Targaryen dynasty. So there's something going on there. There's like something interesting about that pattern of name that George is doing. I don't entirely know what it is. I think we need the rest of the books, George, to figure that out. I'd like to really put a finer point on that, but it's something I just wanted to highlight because he's got a lot of characters. He repeats a lot of names and a lot of parts of names and stuff like that. And I tend to think in fiction that naming is pretty proactive. Like sometimes you have someone who like kind of passively is like, this guy's named Jack or whatever. Like they don't think too hard about it. But Martin has shown through his naming conventions that he is thinking about it. And I do think it matters. I do also think it matters that one of Daenerys' dragons is named Rhaegal. Yeah. That's another situation where we see that name. Yeah. So that's what I had to say when I saw Rhaegal. I was like, oh, this is the other one.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure those are the only two in the Targaryen family tree. There are Rhaegars in the Frey family, but that's just because there's so many people in the Frey family.
Right. They quickly run out of names. So no, I think that's really fascinating, and I think the pattern is really hard to ignore. Because it's one thing when if it was a couple or something like that, but it's like literally every single like
there's at least 4 females. There's original Rhaenys, then there's Rhaena, then there's Rhaenys the queen who never was, then there's Rhaenyra. Yeah. And then I'm not sure about the Raels in there. What exactly? I know one of them was the Mad King's wife.
Yeah, Rhaella is the Mad King's wife. Yeah. Which
she didn't have a good time.
No,
bad times all around.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
And no one had a good time.
But did you want to talk about blood purity now?
Yeah. So we get the picture of a brown-haired Targaryen, which is not as rare in the books and in like Fire and Blood as it is. It it was only depicted as a way to show bastardy, like in House of the Dragon, when there are Targaryens by this time who have dark hair, and it's mostly by it's because it was sort of a lottery, I guess, like amongst Daeron's kids of Daeron has a Dornish wife.
And we love her, even though I think she's dead by now by this point.
I think so.
Yeah. So Baelor has dark hair.
Yeah.
And pour one out for Rhaenys on House of the Dragon, the queen who never was, also has black hair in the books. And I get it for the TV show. They didn't want to confuse us. I don't know. They didn't think we were paying very close attention. So they made her hair blonde. But she was half Baratheon. Her mother was Jocelyn Baratheon. She had black hair. This is how I learned the genetics from playing The Sims 2. This is how genetics works. All genetics is a perfect Punnett square, and that's it. Black hair is a dominant gene.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think I'm curious to see in the TV show what they do with that. I hope they keep it.
Yeah,
but they might not. They might not.
If Baelor has blonde hair, I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah.
If they put him in a Legolas wig, I'm gonna flip out.
That's the thing too. Is like, is it gonna be a bad wig?
Yeah. He actually, because Dunk actually remarks, like in there, he says, like, after he has gone through this whole horrifying realization of, oh my god, I'm talking to Baelor Breakspear, which has got to. I mean, I know we have Harwin, like Breakbones, and like some of these other like good nicknames. Alan Oakenfist, there's some like really good ones, especially in Fire and Blood. I feel like George really leaned into the nicknames. But Baelor Breakspear as that's like names go, that's unbelievable.
Oh my god, imagine.
And after he comes to this like realization, Dunk says, like, belatedly he recalled that the stocky man with the silver beard had addressed Prince Baelor as brother, and says he is blood of the dragon as well. Is like the thought he has to himself, which, like, him saying that specifically is like it. It can just be like George's fancy way of saying he's a Targaryen or whatever. But he could have just said that, where it's like he's blood of the dragon as well. It's like Baelor not having a typical like Valyrian appearance doesn't change, like, obviously that Dunk thinks of him as blood of the dragon.
Yeah.
And so it gets to this like whole blood purity thing of like, by the time Baelor is, here, like, Targaryens have been intermarrying with other houses for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, so the idea that they're all, like, that all of these people are like pure enough to ride dragons and stuff like that. It's like they've, it's all fake.
Aegon the Conqueror, or all the conquerors, Visenya, Aegon, and Rhaenys, their mother was Valyrian.
Right.
Their mother was Valyrian from the beginning, from the jump. If we're saying like you're 50% your mom, 50% your dad, they were 50% Targaryen. So like blood purity is bullshit. But I think what's interesting here is that like he walks into what is a conversation happening between princes about other princes. Right. Yeah. Like their concern is that the princes are not behaving. Yeah. That is what's happening. But I thought they were special. But I thought they were exceptional.
Right.
I thought they were so exceptional and so special and so great. And yet, for some reason, you're saying that he'd sooner ride a whore than a horse. That's so weird for you to say about the prince who's so special and has the greatest blood. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
The all of the various Targaryen character flaws, from whatever angle you look at it, shine a light on like this fact that the blood purity thing is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Because like even like you're looking between Baelor and Maekar and the way they treat Dunk, and like for us, the way Baelor treats Dunk is far superior, right? That's the kind way to treat a person. But within this universe, that's the wrong way to treat some guy who walked into the room. you know. So
and it's not a particularly Targaryen way to treat of
exactly
fire and blood, right? Of like they're not the open-handed ruler, right? Like that's never been their thing. They burn their enemies. So
exactly.
So it's not a particularly Targaryen thing to be magnanimous and like benevolent.
And, exactly. And so it's just like anytime, I think it's really interesting whenever Martin writes the Targaryens like as people and we get to see their flaws.
Yeah.
Because it just undermines the entirety of the like we're so magic that we get to rule the whole kingdoms because we're better than you.
Yes.
And it's like, you're not though, man. You're just like us. You're just rich. Like, especially by now, they don't even have dragons. You're just fucking rich, dude. Like, that's it. So I think as we see more of the Targaryen characters, we can come back to this this concept of blood purity and if it matters. And spoiler, no, it doesn't. But the fact that it doesn't matter.
Well, I think that brings us about to a close as we leave Dunk with Tanzel Too Tall and her puppets.
So what do you want to see in the show? I want to see I want to see the flirting with Tansy.
Yeah, that's such a good scene, and it just needs to be in there, like the awkwardness, the like just I think that exchange does such a good job of him, like it's like he's riding the high a little bit of the Baelor interaction where he has enough confidence to say something, but still does it in this very endearing, ham-fisted way, right? Yeah. Like, where he's just like very awkward, does not have it together, does not think things all the way through, like before he just kind of like charges into them. And yeah, I think that whole sequence I would say like the whole sequence from the Dondarrion interaction into the Baelor introduction into the flirting with Tanzel, like that all needs to be
just directly on screen
as is. Yeah.
And I think you could get I've been trying to figure out kind of where I thought the first episode would end.
Sure.
And I think this is about where you could end the first episode.
Right.
Because his initial goal is get into attorney.
Right.
And that could be like the goal of episode 1 is like,
sure,
bury the master, get your shit together, these interactions. Like you could fit that all into like a 50-minute episode, I think, without much issue.
Yeah. I think yeah, you could do that. I think if they were looking to extend it at all or whatever, the first episode could end with the steward being like, go talk to Dondarrion or whatever, and then come back here or whatever, of him initially sort of getting the door closed at the end of episode 1.
Yeah.
But what I would not want is the Dondarrion interaction to be the end of episode 1. Of like the initial denial being only because I think it's so important to have them right next to each other. Like I think that's thematically important. But
yeah, I think it would also be weird to open an episode on meeting Baelor. Exactly. Like I think if you included it in episode 1, you also like meet the Targaryen, like the Prince of Dragonstone. Like you get like all those characters.
Meet the Targaryens.
Meet the Targaryens. It's a lesser known rap song out there.
Yeah, keeping tabs on the Targaryens is the reality show.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess as that about brings us to the end of this episode, we'll start back on. It's technically page 52.
Yeah, there's a pretty picture in between.
Yeah, and we're only going. It's a shorter section just because it's a little bit dense of a section due to all of the jousting. There's a lot of characters introduced, so we're only going to page 60. And then we'll likely open it up from there in the next section. But so we'll go from the top of 52 underneath the trumpeters with the first day of the tourney until singing his surrender is the last line on page 60. So if you enjoyed this episode, please do YouTube things of liking and subscribing, and let us know what you think. Of course, I know we've been having more comments trickle in and stuff, so I think as we get going, we'll get more momentum going. But I'm always excited to see what people think, and it's been cool to have people weigh in. And I'm always impressed by how thoughtful people are in YouTube comments compared to like elsewhere.
Compared to like TikTok, yeah. Well, you have more character space in YouTube, so there is that.
For sure.
But yeah, definitely, guys, join us in the comments, and like it and subscribe and listen, and eventually we'll get the show and it'll be very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So this episode will be this next episode will I guess we'll see you next Monday then.
Yeah, perfect. Bye, guys.